Here we are, back to Science Review 2021, and we're going to get into heaven and earth, and we're talking about earth right now, and I'm giving you the science, the real science from the Bible on the earth. And this is unassailable stuff. For people who try to dispute the Bible, you're wasting your time. I don't care how many people do it. I don't care if you have a PhD in front of your name or something. You're wasting your time. You can't contradict the word of the living God. You're just wasting your time. And if you want to be a heretic, when you die, you'll find out that was not a very good place to be. And but let's get back to the lesson, Germain, as I greet you in the only name given amongst men. For those of you who just clicked this video on, I'm dealing with heaven and earth. This is a science review, or I call it Science 2021. And I'm going over heaven and earth, and I'm just about done with heaven and earth. This is a review of my previous lessons that are online, and you can just click them on. And I'm giving you real boots on the ground science. Well, whatever I tell you is the truth and it's a fact. It's real science. The word science means to know, and I know what I'm talking about. Not because I'm smart or anything. It's just that I sat down and read my Bible with my TV off and any distractions, and I asked Father to show me His Word and to grace me and give me things I don't deserve, and to show me mercy and ignore my nature and my errors, and put me on the mercy seat and hide me in the cleft for me. Let me hide myself under the shadow of your wings, and cover me and hide my errors in the resurrection of thy dear Son. And that's what we do here. Now, let's get back to the spin zone here. And this no spin zone, is this fact or fiction? And we left off on the runway. I'm going to put a new board up here. So plane flight and landing, as one example, they prove the Bible is telling the truth. A plane going east must turn north to land on a north-south runway. And do planes line up with the runway, or take into account the 400 yards per second the Earth going east before they land? And it's common sense for even a second grader that the Earth spinning would demand that the plane calculate the spin and turn north at a much more farther east position in the United States, maybe Florida. I don't know. I haven't done the calculation. In a 5 minute, after the plane turns north, it takes at least 5 minutes to land. 3 to 5 minutes, easy. Minimum. And at 400 yards a second, you're talking about turning in Florida, you know. And that's mandatory by the freedom that the plane owns in the sky and the captain has with leverage and his steering wheel in the plane. He can turn left, he can turn right, he's free as air. And these planes are flying at 30,000 feet sometimes. I think planes go to 90,000 feet or so. So, you know, these planes they're up there. So all this adds up to one thing, that there is no spin zone here. And this should be video 5. I haven't decided what number I'm going to put on this, but this should be part 5 of heaven and earth, as I show you the dimensions and the physics of heaven and earth, celestial and terrestrial physics of what's going on with your world based upon the Bible and the truth. See, God just doesn't want you. Father does not want you just to know that Jesus is. It came down and loved you and died for you and go to bed. He wants you to never forget that and to continually rejoice in that and to give thanks and to think about it and love the Lord in real time. But He also wants you to know the truth around you. That's common sense. Why would He want to lie about the dimensions around you when He says He is the truth? When I turn my TV on, I don't say, oh, he said that's the way it is because he's wearing a suit and he's smiling. You know, that doesn't mean that he's telling me the truth. Now they have the weather on TV where they curve the clouds. I'm going to go into that a little bit more later about the curve and stuff. So surely flying objects in any type of gravity zone are free, and if they're higher, they're supposed to have less gravity, and the barometric pressure is obviously less the higher the plane goes, and it's escaping all of this, and it's supposed to be escaping the supposed lock owned by flying objects. And since the Earth is moving 400 yards a second and covers a lot of ground, the plane would turn north. In Carolina, Georgia, it would have to. And then there's serious problems as to the Earth going that fast, and the wheels and the plane are going north and south. It doesn't make any sense, all of it. I'm done with that part. We're going to move on. The runway, you're flying east and you turn north. Where would you turn north? You have to turn north because the runway is going north and south. Then when I went to Atlanta from Los Angeles, the plane turned north, and guess what it did? It lined up with the runway. Why? Because it had to. Because the Bible is telling the truth, and men are liars. That's the way it is. A lot of men are just deceived. They're goats. Oh, Billy said it, so it must be true. You need to go to your Bible to find out what's true. Then you can ascertain whether Billy is telling the truth or not, or Frank, or whoever, Mr. Franklin, or whoever it is. And I asked questions when I was growing up because my dad taught me to ask questions. Just because somebody says something, you don't necessarily believe it. That goes for everybody, no matter where they are or who they are. The President of the United States, doesn't matter. You're not disrespecting people's office by questioning what they're saying. You're supposed to do that. Because God is the final authority. Peter was confronted by authority in the book of Acts. And they said, don't do this. And Peter said, you have authority. That's basically, I understand that. But I'm obeying the highest authority. He was telling the governors who were locking him up, and the government, he was telling them that they're not the highest authority, and we go by what Daddy says, what Father says here. That's what we go by. And a lot of people want to worship humans. The president said this, the scientist said that, and boy, he's wearing a suit, and he studied, and he looks smart, and all this. A lot of things Einstein said were absolutely ridiculous. They don't exist. There is no space-time continuum because there is no space. So a lot of things that you thought were true and you heard, they're erroneous. Let's keep going. I'm done with the plane. I had the plane as an example, and it's over. I'm done with the plane example. Okay, I'm done with it. And we have the earth and the pillars and the when the Bible says the earth moves, God moves the earth, and generally in an earthquake. And when it says it moves, it's telling you that it's still. It tells it over and over again. The earth moved. If the Bible says the earth moved, that means it must have been still in order for it to be moving. See, that's you can't move something that's already moving, more or less. See, that's the bottom line. And one of the most absurd things before we move on is people telling me that the balloons at the Del Mar racetrack area at the equine center there that they're locked in the air. That is so. You must be. I'm done. They're locked. There's some sort of plumb line, pardon me, and a stick that's got them stuck where they are. All of this is just, you have to be, this is bordering on insanity. This whole idea of new science and so forth. It is. It's not good. Now, we're going to move on. Now, before we move on, I want to talk about some general science facts that I'm going to get back into later. Okay, we're going to switch gears. I'm going to let the spin go for a moment, and I want you to adjust. Jeremiah's going to take a break, and I'm going to leave. I'm going to take this board down, and for those of you who wanted to keep this, you can just freeze this on your computer or whatever. But because I give you some examples here of the real deal. This is the real deal here you're looking at. And it's unassailable. You can't confront, you can't contradict what I have here. It's impossible. You know, and that goes for my my other graph. I'll put that other graph up there as I give you a sneak peek. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go into a little bit of general science fiction. I'm going to give you a little bit of science fiction here of what you saw on TV, what your biology or your physics teacher told you, astronomy, and so forth. And I'm going to tell you the truth pertaining to a lot of things. Okay, I'm going to take a break here, and we're going to stop the spin stuff. Okay, we're going to get off that. I think this is quite clear for anybody. Like I said, I taught 4th to 8th graders, and I'm sure they would gobble this up, and we could move on and go have recess, and go have a burger for lunch, you know, and so forth. It's over. I'm gonna get into some more of this, but I'm just telling you that sharing with you that the questions and answers are quite clear. You know, and so I'm gonna stop right here. I'm gonna put the Astrodome and the Thunderdome up here for you to take a peek at while I talk about some general basic facts of science. Then I'm going to go back to those basic facts in more detail later on, okay? Because we're winding this down. But I decided to throw in a little bit of the future for you in the middle of Heaven and Earth. In other words, this is the portion of Heaven and Earth in my science review. But I've decided to stop and give you a sneak peek into the future lessons on Science 2021, okay? Which is a review and a revision of my earlier lessons on science. Okay, you got that? Now, I'm going to give a quick little rundown on a lot of things that are in general science that I'm going to get into later on that are not necessarily related to the Heaven and Earth portion, which is what I'm dealing with right now. Okay, I don't want you to get confused. I'll be right back. So this should be part 5 or something. I'll enumerate it later. And this is all still part of Heaven and Earth. Okay? But I decided to get into some of the issues in general science, and then we're going to get right back to Heaven and Earth. Okay? This is not Heaven and Earth. I'm going to give you a little bit of general science because we're just about done with the spin zone, no spin zone. Okay, as a matter of fact, I only have one more board left over here. As many of you know, I'm a board man. I really like putting science, or my lessons rather, on boards. And it's easier for me to see, and maybe I'm a visualist, or I like things to be. Anyway, let's move on. So this is my main board, the primary board I have, that shows Heaven and Earth and shows you what God created when He created in the beginning. Was that in the beginning God created the heaven and the earth, and this is what He made. It's a can. Now it looks like a square here, but it's actually a can. God created a can, and there's a top to the can and there's a bottom to the can. One is heaven and one is hell. And there's only 2 plateaus. There is no other earth or planets or this or that. And the moon doesn't have dirt. The moon is actually light. And the sun is actually electromagnetic energy, probably. Stars are not fireballs. The only fireball is God or down below. That's it. Or a volcano or something, which comes from the earth below, correct? Now, I showed you what the stars look like. That's a picture of an actual star right there. Stars are plasma, probably plasma and electricity and so forth. They're almost like living beings. When God creates something, it's living, more or less. Even water has life in it. You can play music for water, and depending upon what kind of music you play, the water will take a particular shape and so forth. Water is actually living. That's why we call this living waters. You understand that? Air is life. Without air, you're dead. Almost everything God creates is related to life. Food. That's why homosexuality is death, because it doesn't produce life. Everything that doesn't produce life will die. If you want to get into a counterproductive mode, such as murder, stealing, whatever, then you've just killed yourself. That's the point. And if you're taking the truth, you're taking in air. See, that's the whole point of air, is that you're taking in oxygen so you can live. And if you're taking truth, then you're going to live. See, oxygen is like truth. Because light makes oxygen when it hits the tree and the chlorophyll, and you have photosynthesis, and that creates air, and without it, you're dead. And the same is with truth, because it's truth. Air is truth. And it comes from light. See, it's all related. Whenever God makes something, it's productive. That's the point. That's why the burning bush was not burning up for Moses. It wasn't burning up because God can't burn anything up. It's his nature to create living stuff. That's what he does 24/7. Any life that he creates, it never deserved the life they had. It was given to them freely. So they can't complain when they're extinguished in any way. Why? Because they didn't create themselves. Now I'm going to go into some general science, so get ready. I'm going to go quick. This is going to be quick, and it's going to be snap, okay? And I want you to get ready as we change the subject from heaven and earth in my science review for 2021. I'm going to go through this pretty quick, so I want you to just strap on as I go through this. And I'm going to leave this board up here. You just look at it and ponder in your subconscious or whatever what you're looking at, because this is what God created, what you're looking at. And it's about time the truth got some exposure. And God doesn't bring the truth unless people are humble. The humble shall hear and rejoice. God gives good things to the humble that they don't deserve. That's why a lot of people will never see what you're looking at right now, because they're proud and they're greedy and they're violent and they hurt, and that's all they do. They'll never see this stuff. But you who've gotten on your knees and you've opened up your heart to love Jesus Christ with all of your heart, you're going to get some revelation. Because you like the purposes of caring for people and glorifying the name of the Lord in doing so by loving people. That's what this is about. This is a love recovery team, because the devil goes out and beats on people, and then we go to recover. We're the recovery team. We're the bandagers. That's our job. The devil causes car accidents, and then we take the people in the accident psychologically. That's what we do. And then when you get lots of truth, it changes your soul. The word of the Lord, it changes your soul. It enlightens the heart. It makes the heart glad. That's why people are so depressed, because they keep listening to lies and turn their TV on. Well, how can they not be but deflated? They can't be inflated because they're not getting the truth. The truth inflates you. People turn their TV on, you go knock on their door, and you answer the door, they're angry, they're upset, they're empty. They're empty, and they keep reaching for ball games and Kool-Aid, and the Kool-Aid is going to make them feel happy. The TV Kool-Aid. One more drink of Kool-Aid, and another drink of Kool-Aid, and you just keep drinking Kool-Aid, and that's not going to satisfy your soul. You need soul food. You need something that sticks to the ribs of satisfaction, and that's the word of the living God. That's what's going to bring you satisfaction. That's what's going to put you to sleep in a nice, mild, and comfortable position. You're not respiring the truth. And how are you going to be satisfied? They had that famous song, the rock and roll song, I can't get no satisfaction. It's a million selling song. No, I can't. Well, you can't get satisfaction by inhaling lies. That rock and roll dude is probably taking drugs. I don't know. Who knows? He's probably taking drugs. He's probably fornicating. He's lying. He could be racist. He could be doing a whole lot of evil things that are not going to bring him peace. Only the gospel and good news brings you peace, which is the truth, which is putting on a circumcised, caring heart. There is no other way to find satisfaction. Forget it. You're wasting your time. Okay? David said, the Lord is my shepherd, I have no want. That means he's satisfied. He does this, he does that, he does this, he does that, he leads me, he guides me, he does it. But if you keep saying, you do it, I got to do it, Billy did it, oh, I'm so proud of Billy, Billy did this, Billy's accomplishments, I did this, I did that, then you never have peace. All you'll have is a little shallow pool of Kool-Aid. What they call ameliorations. We a little fun, a dizzy ride. Woo! That's your whole life. One big amusement park. And the word amusement means don't think. So that's not good. Let's keep going. Now, Jeremiah, what are you talking about? General science. I'm going to give you a little general science, which I'm going to get into later on. But this is not the general science segment. This is the heaven and earth segment. But I decided to stop it and to give you some general science that we're going to get into later. Okay? I'm just going to give you an overview of some future things. I've already gone over these in my science lessons that are online now, but I've decided to go over them again and give you a different twist. Okay? Or not a twist, but I don't want to use that word. A different perspective. Okay? Now, some of this will be repetition of the other science lessons of general science, but I'm going to give just a little different perspective, okay? So we're going to stop heaven and earth for a minute. I'm going to give you a peek into the future segments of Science 2021. That's what I'm doing here. You got that? Okay. Okay, now my students, get your pen and papers out. Okay, here we go. Now, Psalm 139:14. I will praise thee, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Okay, that means I was made. When I went to college, whatever, they told me, and I just saw intermission propaganda film between movies, classic movies, and they said that things came out of nowhere. There was a big bang, and that God didn't create you, and that you used to be a caveman, and cavemen were in caves. That's a very popular lie at the universities, where men were cavemen. They didn't know anything, and nobody was taking care of them, so they had to struggle for survival. That is absolute nonsense, and it's a flat-out lie from the devil. That's all it is. God took care of Adam and Eve. They had a wonderful garden. Now, how did the United States of America, which is supposed to be a Christian community, how did they revert back to the mental retardation and the absolute sick perspective of saying that you didn't have any help when you started out as a human being? I mean, how did we transition there? How did that happen? Who's in charge? That's my first question. And who financed this? See, I ask questions. Do you ask questions? I do. Who financed this propaganda for Babylon? Who did this? Who removed Jesus Christ providing everything Adam and Eve needed, animals, food, water, everything, in a garden? How did we go to, I'm in a cave now, dragging a woman by her hair? How did this all happen? And then the theme continues throughout the certain segments of the development of Mr. Neolithic, so on, and Paleolithic, and all of this asinine stuff that is just sickening. Because all it is just basically showing God their rear end. That's all they're doing. Jeremiah's on fire here. Many of you have noticed that. There's a fire here. I was fearfully and wonderfully made. I was designed. And furthermore, Adam and Eve had everything that they wanted. What did I just read in Isaiah? Was that Isaiah? God said, is there anything I haven't done for these? Let me put it in American terminology, and I can do this. Father doesn't mind me doing this. Let me share this with you, and I'm taking some liberties here, but Daddy doesn't mind. Let me tell you this. What Father is saying here in American terminology is, I've done every darn thing I can do for these people. Everything. And they're showing me their tail feathers. That's what he's saying. I'm not going to go to that scripture right now. I've done everything for my vine that I can do. I dressed it. I did everything for it. And the same thing goes for Adam and Eve. God gave them everything. Plants, animals, food, shelter, cool of the evening. They had every darn thing they needed. And then I turn my TV on, and an American movie channel has a video that says that man struggled in the cave, and he dragged this woman by the hair and stuff, and all this absolute asinine nonsense. How did it happen in the so-called, I just saw a movie here recently with Mickey Rooney, whatever, this is God's country. That's the name of the movie, I think. This is God's country. Well, if it's God's country, then why do we get videos that say that God didn't take care of early humans? And they used to be monkeys or something. And then that means that it's a lie. It's not God's country. Now, is part of this country God's country? You better believe it is. But obviously the whole country is not God's country. The entire South believed that Africans were animals and you could beat on them. So the idea that this is God's country, you got to tweak that declaration. That's not necessarily so. And we have a woman with a candle in her hand, and she's Miss Columbia. And she's got clouds above her, and she's introducing a movie with a spinning globe, which is nonsense. And then in the intermission, they show you a caveman, and so that's where man came from. And he didn't have provision, so he had to beat the other caveman in the head, and that's how we came up with survival of the fittest. Because only the people who know how to struggle and who use their violence, you see all the themes or the subtext here. This is all no good. That God didn't provide for humans. They were in caves. They weren't in caves. They were in a garden. To put it bluntly, these are jackasses, and they're very irritating. Because I'm an American citizen, and here on the license plate of my car it says, "In God we trust." God comes first around here. Not some jackass from Germany who used to make bombs during World War II, and they hired him at NASA or something like that, wherever they're from, these people. And for these movie producers to allow them to make these movies and so forth, they're going to pay for all this nonsense. For God not to get the glory for what he created. Let's keep going. So David is acknowledging in Psalm 139:14, or in the chapter, that God, marvelous are thy works, that my soul knoweth right well. So what does knoweth right well mean? That's the same word for science. Jeremiah, is that the way it is? That's the way it is. The word science means I know what I'm talking about. That's what it means. It's a fact. I know right well. Well, David just said he knows right well scientifically that he was fearfully and wonderfully made. So somebody's lying. Either David's lying or the guy at NASA is lying. One of the two, the guy who Warner Brothers hired to make the video. Somebody's lying. And I'm here to tell you it's not the Bible. Forget that noise. So we have a satanic bunch of big-time liars. That's what we have here. They make all these composites and photoshops of gas bombs and atomic bombs and all this. It's all nonsense. It's all nonsense. There's no atomic bomb. There are no planets. There are no images in outer space. There is no outer space. There is no comet stuff and asteroid belts. And all this stuff is utter nonsense. That's all it is. There will never be any primordial soup. Monkeys didn't. 50% of the monkeys did not jump down from the tree, and the other 50% stayed in the tree. And they lost an extra knuckle, and their hair follicles changed, and they went from walking on 4 to 2 because it just got warm over a couple of years or something like that. All this stuff they told me and all this stuff, I was like, yeah, right. The Big Bang, nothing made everything. Then they changed their theory from nothing made everything to, oh, there were some atoms that made everything. Then they tried to say, tried to explain where the atoms came from. Because first they said the Big Bang was nothing made everything. Then they changed it and tweaked it recently where, no, there were some things there, but they didn't answer where those things came from. And then they said spontaneous generation or abiogenesis. Life came from no life. Rocks, which came from who knows where, and lightning and water, which came from who knows where, struck each other, and they made the DNA molecule, which is like putting 1,000 airplanes together by themselves. Can you imagine 1,000 airplanes putting themselves together? Okay, listen, this is all erroneous stuff. Origin of species. Species change over time, and adaptation and evolving, and because they were forced to. God didn't care for those creatures, so they had to kill each other, fight for property. This is all sick. Survival of the ones who are the most violent, the fittest. The smartest ones are the smartest. They're the ones that, you're the smart ones. You survived. Fossil fuels. Oil is from creatures. That's nonsense. All fossil fuels are not from fossils. They're from inorganic materials. There's no such thing as fossil fuels. There's no such thing as a fossil anyway. There's nothing older than 6,000 years, and Shakespeare was right in the play As You Like It. He said the earth is 6,000 years old. Thank you, Mr. Shakespeare. That is correct. Dinosaurs. I don't believe in dinosaurs either. There's something strange about dinosaurs. How could a brontosaurus eat enough food in 4 hours? After it uses the bathroom, has babies, walks around, drinks water, it has about 4 or 5, 8 hours of light to eat in the light. If it does, it eats in the dark. I don't know. Do you know how much food a brontosaurus, vegetables, as an herbivore? How many pounds of food does that animal have to eat in order to sustain itself before it dies of malnutrition and so forth? Dinosaur creatures grow arms over time. So if you're walking around here and you have to reach out to grab something, you're going to grow an arm. Your DNA is going to put in the DNA helix an arm. This is all nonsense. Millions of years for this. Carbon dating. When I was in college, I asked the professors, some of the people there, I said, do you believe carbon dating is accurate? Because you can put a nickel made in 1955, and it'll say it's 7 zillion years old or something. Carbon dating is nonsense. Everything they do is nonsense. Atomic bombs, fallout. What happened in Hiroshima? They went right back to work the next day, the Japanese. And they were asked, where's the fallout? Because there was no fallout. Because there is no atomic bomb, and there is no Geiger counters, and there is no radiation this, and you need a radiation shield, and this is all utter nonsense. Atomic energy, I don't buy that either. Listen, NASA is an honest American group of people. You believe that? NASA pictures are honest. Their space trips are honest. Astronauts do this. No. Light years. Woo, yeah. The sun and stars are fireballs, and they show you the fireball. No, they're not fireballs. Darwin studied science. No, he did not study science. Movie studios are honest. I'm going to get into that later. As a matter of fact, we're getting into that next. Politicians are honest. The world is just, it's a mixed up place, isn't it? It's sad. Banks and governments are never joined for evil purposes, for wars or helicopter productions, or who knows what they're doing out there. We're not going to get into their evil, making money, starting wars, whatever. You put $20 in the bank, and they make $400 on the $20, and they give you back 3 cents, and they brag about it. It's in the front of the bank. We give 2.0000%. Did they tell you how much they made off your $4,000? They're not going to tell you that, are they? Because you'd be angry. Let's keep going. We spin 450 yards a second. Curves in the earth can be readily seen. Right. Let's stop there for a minute. That's the next segment of Heaven and Earth. I'm going to show you that Hollywood showed you that the Earth was flat. We're going to get into that in a minute. They tell us that we're supposed to see curves. Wikipedia. I'm going to go into that into detail in the next lesson. Not Heaven and Earth. Okay? You're supposed to see a curve, 8 inches per mile. It's utterly absurd. Listen, I spent most of my life at the beach. I'm a beach boy. I'm in Indiana now, but I've spent most of my life at the beach. Anyone who believes the earth is curved, who hangs out at the beach, has lost their mind, or they're on the verge of losing your mind. You're just not paying attention. Let's put it that way. That's a safer way of saying it, because there's never a bend. No matter how high, if you go to the mountain there at Robert Ryan Park, above Trump's golf course there, if you go up there, which is a couple hundred feet, whatever, elevation, and you look at Catalina Island, you will see that there is no curve. The curve is in your head. There is no curve. That's 40 miles wide view. There should be a curve. It's common sense. So what I'm seeing contradicts what they're telling me. So my mind is lying, or they're lying, and one of the two. That's all there is. If it looks like a duck and quacks like a duck, it's probably a duck. If you're brainwashed, then what can we do? Hair follicles, knuckles changed over a couple thousand years of a chimpanzee, because they have extra knuckles and less knuckles, and their hair follicles are totally different than ours, and so forth. And 50% jumped out of the trees, and we're going to stop right there. 50% of them jumped out of the trees, and the other 50 stayed in the trees. On and on this goes. Okay, let's change boards here. Hold on. I'm going to get into some more of the flat Earth routine. Okay, here I'm back. I'm going to get started on, we have 3 or 4 more boards to show, and we're done, okay? I'm on number 6, board 3. Here we are. So, encyclopedia, Wikipedia, Wakipedia, whatever you want to call it, Encyclopedia Insanika, all these people are doing is lying, and they're lying out of their teeth. Do they speak out of truth? Yes, they do. But a lot of things they tell you are lies, or they're just flunking physics 101. Okay, that's the point. And what you see and read, are they the truth? Is TV telling you lies? NASA, Hollywood, colleges. Most of these people now, they're lying through their teeth, and they're contradicting the Word of God, and some of them know the earth is flat, and they love to lie. I'm going to give you an example right now where people know. An artist, I've been I've been an amateur artist for most of my life. And for me not to notice the horizon line is not going to happen. I'm going to go over the horizon line with you right now. And 8 inches per mile from Wikipedia bend. You're supposed to see 8 inches, and and technically it's Pythagorean math from Egypt and so forth, where supposedly it originated, but it didn't originate in Egypt and so forth, which was another part of the lie that they had in the movie last night with the propaganda from Babylon, that The Egyptians were the only ones who knew science, or the first ones. Or this is absurd. That Adam and Eve didn't know any science. It's crazy. Let's keep going. So NASA, Hollywood, colleges, the Natural Museum, and all this stuff. They're telling you the truth and so forth. Encyclopedia Britannica. Why are there so many liars and flunking physics students? Let's address this. Well, there's a lot of reasons. And let's just stick to talking about these images that we have up here and the curve lie, 8 inches a mile. And it is Pythagorean math, because the farther you get away from one point and you're looking at a curve, the bend increases exponentially. I'm not going to go into that right now, but in other words, the bend from where you're standing, in other words, if you see a building, I'm going to go over that with you. If you drive away from a building, it's interesting, you see the first floor no matter how far you basically go. Why? Because there's no curve, that's the point. The building just gets smaller. But you can still see the first floor. I'm going to go into that a little bit later, as we get this curved lie and science fiction out of the way, okay? I have that movie, The Day the Earth Stood Still. What a bunch of nonsense. You mean the day the Earth moved? That's... And it's supposed to be very, very intelligent people. The alien came and he wanted to talk to the most intelligent individual. So he went to a man who taught that the Earth spun 400 yards a second. I'm here to tell you that if a man tells you that he's a scientist and he's intelligent and he says the Earth moves 400 yards a second, he is not the most intelligent person in the world. Not by a long shot. He just flunked Physics 101. Does he know some other interesting things in mathematics? Well, obviously. But he's flunked. We're going to stop right here. I'm going to take a break. And we're going to go to video 6 and so forth. And we're going to go right into the no spin, no curve zone, okay? Science, fact, or fiction. From not Wikipedia, Encyclopedia Britannica, or the Jesuit Pope News Media, or any of these entities that the recent President Trump just accurately observed. He was right. They do lie a lot. And that's one thing that I like about that president. He's right. That the world is unfortunately made of a lot of liars. And that's what the president said, and he was right. Now, let's stop right here. Shalom and Maranatha as we listen to the voice of the Lord. Shalom.